Story time. My ex keeps showing up at my door. All these feelings, a place to talk about it, even if it's just to strangers on the internet. I've always been pretty awkward, especially when it comes to relationships. I've never been a hit with the ladies, you could say, but when I first met Bess, it was like a lightning strike. I was head over heels in love from the get-go. It was my first time falling in love, and I just knew she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. It seemed like she felt the same way about me, too. We got really serious really fast, talking about having kids and living together before we even hit a week. But then came the day that changed everything. I call it D-Day. It started when I saw just a part of a message flash on her phone. It was enough to make me stop and think. That night, I lay awake, my mind racing, until I couldn't take it anymore. I got up while she was still asleep and decided to go through her phone. Now, I'm pretty tech-savvy. My job involves creating mobile apps, so I'm not a stranger to digital stuff. While I didn't find any definite proof, there were a bunch of red flags. There were gaps where messages should have been, likely deleted, and then there was her Snapchat with this one contact marked with an emoji that suggests they talked a lot. It was all these little clues that added up to a big, uneasy question mark in my mind about what was really going on. When I wasn't looking that day, things really spiraled out of control. I also stumbled across some photos of a guy I didn't know, which pushed me to take an extreme step. Desperate for answers, I went online, did a quick search, and chose the most expensive spyware service I could find to monitor her phone. This service was pretty intense. It let me remotely activate the camera and microphone on her phone. Bess was scheduled to go on a 5-day business trip the next day. She's in sales, so travel isn't out of the ordinary for her. However, as soon as she left the house, her phone lit up with messages. Reading them, I felt sick to my stomach. I was shaking and ended up throwing up several times. I just couldn't wrap my head around the betrayal. It was like I refused to accept what was staring me right in the face. My obsession grew, and I began digging into everything I could access through the spyware. It turned out that her affair had started more than 2 months before I proposed. Her affair partner, AP, was a work colleague of hers, a married man 10 years older than her, with 3 kids. The kicker? His wife was 7 months pregnant. The worst part of that day came when I remotely activated the microphone and heard them in the hotel room. They were saying they loved each other, bad-mouthing both me and his wife, and even talking about running away together to start a new family. I was completely shattered. I didn't know what to do and didn't have the courage to confront her over the phone. Overwhelmed and needing support, I called my childhood best friend. KK's a tough guy, having grown up in a Brazilian favela. He and his mom moved next door to us when I was 12, and he's been like a brother to me ever since this whole saga unfolded in the UK. A bit about K: his father had passed away a few years back in what his mother described as a random act of violence. K never talked much about it. As for me, my mom left when I was 10 due to her struggles with addiction, and my dad never remarried when K moved next door. He didn't know any English, and during that first summer, we bonded quickly. I picked up a bit of Portuguese, and he started learning English. We connected through our shared hardships. Although it's kind of funny how different we are. I'm the quiet, conflict-shy, nerdy type, while K is outgoing, fearless, and just naturally tough, not through size or muscle, but sheer grit. Everyone seemed to love K. Back in high school, someone threw him a surprise party and 250 people showed up. I could probably count my friends on one hand, and a couple of them are more acquaintances than friends. When I shared everything with K, the messages, the emails I found, there was a long silence. He didn't have specific advice for me, saying this was a battle I needed to navigate in my own way, but he did share his own experience with a girl who cheated on him and how he had a dramatic reaction, which he described as going nuclear. K's experience was the only point of reference I had, so I spilled my guts about wanting to do something decisive. Over the next few days, we got busy. We packed up all of Bess's belongings, moved them to a storage unit, and I changed the locks on my apartment. The plan was all set for when we picked her up from the airport. Thankfully, Kay was driving because I was so nervous. I sat on my hands the whole ride to hide how much they were shaking. Bess was all happy and laughing when she got into the car. She instantly noticed something was wrong with me. I just told her I wasn't feeling well. Kay smiled at her and told her I had a cool surprise planned for her at her parents' house. I didn't say anything, not a single word the entire trip. I tried to not let her see my face and a fake smile as best I could from the moment Bess got into the car. The rest of the day, it seemed like it played out in slow motion. I had already talked to her parents the day before and told them we were coming by. I told them that I had a surprise announcement to make when we arrived there. There were hugs and smiles, and I almost backed out at that point. I love her parents. They've been so good to me and always made me feel welcome. Sumita's was sitting on the sofa in between her parents. At some point, someone asked about the big surprise. Kay encouraged me to Go on. I started off by telling her parents how fond I was of them and how grateful I was that they had welcomed me into their family and treated me in such a way that I always felt welcome. Then I choked up for a few minutes. I had this entire speech planned out. It was eloquent and composed. I totally forgot my speech. So I just blurted it out. Best has been cheating on me with a work colleague that has kids, and his wife is 7 months pregnant. The engagement is off. The wedding is off. Our relationship is over. Yes. Your stuff is in the storage container. I just dropped the key on the floor. This is goodbye forever. I walked out while everyone was just sitting there silent. I heard Kay tell them that I needed time to heal and to please don't contact me unless it's absolutely necessary. In the car, Kay told me to post to the Facebook group. The Facebook group was where we were planning the wedding. Everybody was on there, my entire family, her entire family, friends, and everyone. I posted a short message almost identical to what I told her parents and then disconnected from the group. Kay kept telling me he was proud of me, that one day I would look back at this and be happy that I stood up for myself. I was just stunned. Nothing about this felt good or real. The next planned stop was the APS wife. When she opened the door, I just blurted it all out. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm pretty sure she slapped me at some point as I gave her a thumb drive with the evidence on it. Her husband comes around the corner behind her. His wife immediately starts screaming. She told him to get lost and not come near her. He tried to make excuses, but as soon as he stepped up, Kay was right up in his face. Instantly, you heard the lady get out. After a bit of more back and forth, he eventually packed a bag and scuttled off. Kay talked to his wife for a while, and I was just trying to process my screwed up life in my mind. In the end, we were invited inside. Kay called his mother and agreed to spend the night until her father could arrive the next morning to pick her up. She was scared her husband would turn back up, and she did not want to be alone inside. I was treated like I was turned invisible. No one saw her, noticed me. I just sat there crying silently. I understand she was in a much worse situation than me. I was not married and did not have kids still. I was breaking inside that nobody even looked at me. At some point, they all fell asleep. I still sat there crying, decided that I was going to just end it. I started looking for pills, but I couldn't find any. In the end, I got a long knife and a plan to just stab myself through the heart with it. I held it towards my chest with both hands, and when I took a deep breath, a knife went under my rib cage and penetrated about a centimeter. It hurt like hell. I sat there for a while watching the knife with the bloody tip. I have no idea how long I stood there. In the end, I left the knife on the table and went back to my chair. There I sat crying for the rest of the night. I just couldn't get my head around what was happening. Her father arrived around 5:30 in the morning. I opened the door to let him in. I was covered in blood. He was amazingly calm, considering how I learned. He calmly asked me some questions if I was okay. I mumbled some gibberish. He went inside to find his daughter while I just stood there holding the door. Shortly after, Kay came out to talk to me. I stared at him for a minute, then I just passed out. I woke up in the hospital. It's 3 months ago now. Kay stayed with me the first few weeks after I returned home. He was scared I was going to off myself again. I haven't spoken a word to my fiancée. I changed my phone number and blocked her email address and all access on social media. She has come to my door a few dozen times. She talks through the door. Sometimes she talks for 4 hours. She talks about how sorry she is. She begs for forgiveness. She has told me that she has broken it off with the affair partner, that the wife is divorcing him, and that she's been fired because the APS wife reported them to HR. When she comes, I just sit right inside the door. I listen to her and cry. I know it's really up. I'm just torturing myself. I haven't responded to her yet. She's told me that she could see the door move when I leaned against it, so she knows I'm there. I haven't healed or anything. I still love her like crazy, but my heart and soul is just too damaged. I'm full of anger, hatred, and shame. I know I can never go back to her. It would totally destroy the little self-esteem and self-respect. I still have the confrontation at her parents' place, telling the ape's wife. It gave me nothing to feel better about. If anything, I regret not just walking away. People have been telling me at some point to go numb or to become indifferent. I hope that day is soon for me, because right now every day is hell. Now, for the top of comments before reading the update, this person says, I still love her like crazy. No. You don't. You love the person you thought she was, the person she never really was. I think the best way to move on is to realize she was never the woman that you fell in love with. The personality of hers you love so much really isn't her. It's all a lie. I know facing that truth hurts beyond belief, but it's true. This isn't the end. And even if you aren't the best with women, there are plenty of other women out there who don't pretend to be a person they aren't. You still have plenty of time to find new love, but right now, just focus on healing. And remember, you love the person you thought she was, and she was never that person. You're not. Woke says, I'm so sorry. You sound like you have so much going for you. Loyal friends, income, and intelligence. Integrity. This woman doesn't deserve any more of your energy. Not an ounce of it. Next time she shows up, please call the police and have them remove her. She won't come back if she knows that's a possibility. Please see a therapist. That sounds like you were played by a narcissist. Read about narcissism. It's enlightening. It's hard for someone with empathy and values to understand a person who behaves that way. It is absolutely not a reflection of your worth, attractiveness, etc. I think when you were younger, it's easy to get caught up in the charm and confidence of a narcissist. But be glad you never had any children and was married to her. You dodged a bullet, if anything. Maybe it's time to put yourself back out there. There are so many women looking for a man with the qualities you describe. I know when I was younger, dating can be healing. I have seen my brother grow so much confidence after leaving his marriage when his wife had an affair. The shy, quiet, nerdy types are absolutely the most attractive in my opinion. It sounds like you have been with her for so long. Making new memories and having new experiences without her is important for building back your confidence and sense of self. Take care. Someday you'll look back on this and be so glad for the lessons that tie you. But it takes time to heal now. For the update 1, I ended up trying to talk to her parents to see whether or not they could get her to stop coming to my door. I don't really care what her reasons are. I don't care what she wants. I realize now that my perception of her and who she actually is in real life are two different people. So she can take a long walk off a short pier for all I care. I just want her out of my lives so I can move on. Maybe I'll get a cat or something. Anyway, before I was ready to talk to her parents, her dad showed up at my door. He had a 6-pack of my favorite beer and asked if we could talk. I said sure and told him I'm on my way out. Maybe we could walk and talk. I didn't want him to come inside. Not just because I've been a mess and my apartment reflects that I didn't want to let him in, and maybe suddenly his daughter would be at the door or something, or if it got awkward, I didn't want to have to tell him to leave. I'm not big on confrontation. As you know, you popped 2 bottles of beer and he just started to talk. Initially, he apologized on behalf of his daughter. Then he tells me that his wife and daughter had been pressuring him to go see me to somehow get me to talk to his daughter. He proceeded to tell me that he had no intention of doing that. Quite the contrary, he supported my decisions and actions. He told me that his daughter was spoiled and selfish, and that you'd hope that for once she would have to face the full consequences of her actions. Maybe you'd hope that she could be a better person in the future. Then he got really weird. Really fast, he started asking me a lot of questions about how I was. The questions were leading, and it was obvious that he was hopeful that I was in a lot of pain. What in the actual F? It was like he was anticipating me being in a lot of pain, and that he would enjoy seeing that. It freaked me out, so I told him the complete opposite, that I was over his daughter, that it didn't really bother me that much, and I was very happy. Now and moving on, etc. You seem very disappointed in this. I have no idea why. Then he went on to talk about my ex's pain. His tone was all wrong when he did this. He was trying to hide it, but he seemed gleeful that he was enjoying it. I have to write out of that at that point. I pretended I forgot something at home, said goodbye, and ran off. I'm done with my ex. Now you strangers snapped me out of it. I am ready to move on. It still hurts like a mother. After all, and my self-esteem and ego are still shot, but I am done. I am ready to move on. A lot of you were right. I think I dodged a bullet. Not just with her, but probably with the rest of her family as well. What kind of father is gleeful of his child's suffering? Once again, thank you everybody for all of your help. Update 2. After the feedback on my last post, I realized that maybe I misread the situation with her father. He has always been great to me and I have a lot of respect for him. I decided to give him a call and just to talk to him. You guys were right. His leading questions to me were because he was trying to find out if there was any chance of me going back to his daughter. You said he was hopeful for that and that I was good for her, even though he said she didn't deserve me. That made me feel really good about myself for a while. He recognized that the reason he was smiling when he talked about his daughter was the culmination of a lifelong argument with his wife about her parenting style. He had told her so many times over the years that letting her daughter get away with things, spoiling her, not giving her discipline, etc., would have severe negative consequences in the future. His biggest regret with his daughter was letting his wife overrule him on this. He was smiling and being gleeful in the anticipation of telling his wife he was right. I asked him if everything was okay between us, and there was no problem at all, but he jokingly said maybe it was time for him to get a divorce. Apparently, the confrontation between him and his wife and daughter didn't go that well after meeting me, but this time he told me he wasn't going to back down. This seemed to be a fight that had been a long time coming for him. As for Kay, he has been great as he always is. He's been supporting me and encouraging me all along. Now that I'm out of it, I realize how right he was. That one day I would be proud of what I had done. I stood up for myself, something I usually never do, and I feel awesome. From it 100% will do it in the future when necessary. My ex showed up again at my door, and I actually spoke with her this time. She begged me to let her in so we could talk, but I wasn't going to talk to her on her terms. I was going to talk to her. It would be on my terms. I told her okay, but I had some things to do, and that I would meet her at a local park in a half an hour. I didn't want her inside my mess, and as some of you pointed out, maybe she could make some accusations of something if I met her alone. Strangely enough, I wasn't nervous. It felt kind of good, actually. For once in my life, I felt pretty sure of myself. Anyway, I went to the park. She was crying. I sat down. We had some meaningful small talk. She tried to interrogate me about what me and her father talked about. I told her that was a private conversation between me and him, and frankly, none of her business. I was starting to get bored. So I asked her what she wanted to talk about. She then went into this hour-long tirade about how sorry she was. She loved me so much, how it was wrong, how she hurt me, yada, yada. She begged for me to consider reconciling. She would do anything I told her I forgive her about, because I don't want to carry that anger, hatred, and hurt anymore. But no, getting back together, that is never going to happen. People who love other people don't do what she did to me. Her actions prove beyond any doubt that she is not a nice person. Nice people don't do what she did. I can never trust her again. I told her I want to live my life with a nice person that I can trust, a person that appreciates and loves me, and due to her actions, she's no longer a viable candidate for that role in my life. She cried hysterically. I sat there and watched. It was strange. I've never felt that detached from anybody. I actually felt upset about how little I cared. This indifference isn't me. I can't remember any other time, at least, I called her dad to come and get her. I told her that I hoped that she would get some counseling and fix herself. Something was obviously broke inside her. I tried to encourage her that she would get through this, but she didn't really want to hear any of that. Her dad came. I explained the situation to him. I told her I wish her all the best and good luck. Then I got a neighbor, went to the local animal shelter, and adopted a kitten. I named the kitten Shiny. K joked that he was blinded by my new shiny spines, so the kitten's name is Shiny too. Always remind me to stand up for myself. I'm happy I managed to take the high road and just be honest with her without yelling or calling her names. I've been playing with my amazing kitten, having a lot of fun, and Kay is coming over later to play some video games and swing down some beers. I am sad about my ex. I feel so sorry for her. I will miss the good times that we had, but I'm also relieved that I am done with this for now. I received some hard, uncomfortable truths from some of you, but it was what I needed to hear. Thank you, Reddit. You helped me to finally stand up for myself and deal with this. Moving on to story 2. My husband, 30 male, and I are 29 female, had a bad argument, and I'm staying at a hotel. My husband and I got into an argument today because he decided to clean the washer by dumping in a bunch of vinegar and bleach together. I didn't realize what he had done until I smelled something like chlorine. He told me what he put in. I panicked, set the washer to drain, and ran around the house, opening windows. He then proceeds to roll his eyes and tell me that it's perfectly safe and not toxic and that I was being dramatic. I literally had to pull up Google and show him that vinegar plus bleach equal toxic fumes. He continued to roll his eyes and shrug it off and make me feel stupid for reacting the way that I did. Then he says, well, if your dad didn't stink up our washer doing his laundry here, I wouldn't have even had to clean the washer. For context, my dad is disabled from a stroke, but is still able to live independently, and we help him by doing his laundry at our house when he visits. That's something that he's not been able to do himself, and he doesn't have a washer and dryer in his apartment. My hubby gets along with my dad, and he has never complained in any way related to him before. This was just a weird out of the blue thing for him to say. The gaslighting about the toxic fumes plus the insult towards my dad had me livid. At this point, I did my best to explain why I was mad, and he kept saying things like, I don't care, and it's not a big deal. I decided to pack a bag to stay at a hotel. He followed me into our room as I was packing and starts yelling and bringing up prior arguments from literally years ago. I ignored him and simply said to him, I'm not entertaining this behavior any longer. Right as I was walking out the door, he yells, F you. So here I am staying at a hotel for the night. He hasn't texted or called to check on me at all. I sent my location to my sister for safety purposes, since apparently he doesn't care. This is not how I expected this day to go. I was just reading the comments on a different person. Someone said they can't imagine their husband ever yelling at them. Is that the norm? I'm worried. I've gotten used to a miserable marriage, and I don't know what to do. We've been together for 10 years, and now for some advice. Rasul guy says him almost killing both of you is a big deal, but him invalidating your feelings and getting mad at you is what's going to end your marriage. You need marriage counseling immediately, or you're headed to divorce city. This person says, I'm struggling to understand why dude couldn't have just said, oh shit, I had no idea. Let me get the fan and clear this out. But here's the thing, we know this isn't the first time he's behaved this way, irreverent Bard says. So seeing as you almost died, or at least avoided a debilitating lifelong injury, he needs to take the lumps and swallow his pride. It was an honest mistake to make, but it's complete idiocy to not understand the level of danger you both were in after hitting him with the evidence. Geez. The closing of the throat alone should have been an indicator something was up. Look, Darwinism is a thing. If you're going to stay married to him, make sure you take a really good life insurance policy for him. Know that you will be a wealthy widow probably sooner than later. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you. Story 3. Try and get my team member fired. Get deported. Back in the early 2010s, I started working for a big internet-based company in the UK. The company was opening a new office with a new subdivision in London. When I started, there were 2 team leaders and the office manager. The 2 teams were the content team and the SEO search engine optimization team. I was recruited to be the development team lead, that is web development. When I was interviewed for the job, both the office manager and SEO team lead were carrying out the interview as you do in interviews. When they asked if this or that could be done, I would respond, yes, of course, or, you would get a better result doing X, Y, or Z. So I got offered the job, and for the first year, there was so much going on as well as building a team. I also had a portfolio of websites that needed to be redeveloped and redesigned. It was at this point that some red flags started to pop up. I would have the SEO team lead, we will call him Andy, coming to me and telling me that I needed to do things the way he wanted. I would always push back and say no and give a reason why I was doing things the way I was. Andy would get irate and would complain to the office manager about me. When the office manager would ask me about it, I would explain what had happened and why I had said no, and the office manager would leave it there, because at the end of the day, I was the one with the experience in web development, not Andy. This happened a few times over the first year, and I then realized that the reason that Andy was getting so irate was because he thought that I would be a yes man to him. Sorry, buddy, that is not who I am. So now that we have the backstory, let's get into what led to the revenge. Me and the team had been working hard to get 2 of the new websites completed, and I was due to show them off to the board before they went live. This company's head office was in another part of the country, and I had to leave the office in London at about lunchtime. So I arrived to the hotel that is across the road from the head office about 4 p.m. and jump on my laptop to start going through the sites to run some tests. I was testing functionality, making sure the look and feel were correct. Things like that. Then it happened. We found a major bug that caused a major issue with the functionality of the website. So it is at this point that I am going to introduce the star of our story, Johnny, not real name, but attacked all the same, who was my senior developer. Me and Johnny working through the night, me in the hotel room, and him in the London office. We finally fixed the bug about 7 a.m. the following day. My meeting with the board was at 10 a.m. So after getting showered, feed, and over to the office, I started my day with 0 hours sleep. I go into the meeting, and the first thing that is said is the CEO asking if I was okay. I had met him a few times, and he was a really nice guy. I explained that we had found an issue with the sites yesterday, and me and Johnny had worked through the night to fix it before the meeting. Long story short, everyone was really impressed and loved the new sites. At the end of the meeting, the CEO pulled me aside and thanked me for everything, and then told me to go home and get some sleep. It was about a 3-hour train ride to London and then another hour home. I thanked him and went on my way. So, after taking my team out for a well-deserved lunch to say thank you, the office manager then organized a night out for the whole office to celebrate. On the following Friday, we started off at a fancy bar. Not my sort of thing. I am a man of cheap tastes, and then everyone moves on to a small club. I go to the club for a bit, but then leave quite early in the night as I need to get a train home. I say my byes, and then head home. I come into the office on the Monday, and there is something going on. I speak with Emma, not real name, the content team's lead. She does not know what is going on, but there are people from head office, HR, and others. Then a few minutes later, all the team leaders are called into a meeting. We are all squished in one of the small meeting rooms. There is office manager, 2 members of the HR team from head office, and the 3 team leaders, including myself. So HR explained that there has been a complaint made against Johnny, a member of the SEO team, we will call him Mark, had called Andy on the Friday saying that Johnny had been making racist comments while everyone was out at the club. Both myself and Emma were taken aback. This was not like Johnny. On a side note, I felt that I need to explain the races of people involved. This is just for context and not an attack on anyone involved. Johnny, Emma, and I are white British. Andy is African, born in Britain, I believe, and Mark is Indian. Once again, I believe so. The whole day was spent with HR doing interviews with the other people that were there that night, and we then all reconvened towards the end of the day. The result of the interviews were that no one had heard anything like what Mark was saying, So it was Mark's word against Johnny's. This was not acceptable for Andy. He wanted Johnny fired and cried. We could not have someone like that in the office. So both Emma and I looked at each other, and though that it was strange that he was so instant on firing Johnny with no evidence, both the office manager and HR agreed, and Johnny was let off with a warning, and to be aware in the future of how things he says that could be misinterpreted. Life went back to normal in the office, that is, until about 2 months later the story of what had happened had gone round the office. About 12 people. Then one afternoon I was pulled aside by one of the guys on the content team, and he said that he had overheard Andy and Mark talking and thought I should know. We went into one of the meeting rooms, and he laid everything out. What I heard made my blood boil, and I think, had I been in a cartoon, steam would have been erupting from my ears. He told me that the racism complaint was faked, and a plan that Andy had to attack my team because I would not bend to his demands. Him and Mark were on a call outside the club. Andy was not there that night, and that is when he heard what they were doing. It later came out that their plan was to make the complaint against Johnny and get him fired, which would then lead on to Andy complaining that I was not fit to run a team if I let that sort of this happen under my leadership. My first question was why he didn't bring this up with HR in the interviews. He said that he did, but it was his word against both Andy and Mark. I thanked him for this and went on with what I was doing. I was pissed. There was no way that I was going to let this slide, but I knew that if I was going to go after them, I needed to have everything in place beforehand. I didn't tell Johnny what I had been told and asked the guy that told me to keep it to himself for now. I didn't want Johnny to get pissed off and do something that would get him fired, or worse, affect any revenge I could dish out. So I watched everything the SEO team did and didn't do. Then it happened. It was like angels had descended from heaven to deliver me the winning lottery ticket. The building we were in was a 3-story building with a main stair, with a door on each floor to the offices. The stairwell also led to a door out to the street. At the time I was a casual smoker and used it to get a break from the screen and clear my head if something I was working on was not going well. So I walk out of the door to the office and into the stairwell, and who is there? Mark, of all people. He is on the phone, and he goes white as a sheet when he sees me. Now he is mid-sentence with the person on the other end of the phone, and as I am walking past, he is forced to carry on the conversation. I overhear, and from what he is saying I can tell that he is talking to a school or something like that. The conversation sounding like he was looking for information about applying and about a visa. I thought that was a strange call to be having, and something was fishy about it. I had my suspicions as to what was going on, but nothing concrete at this time. A few days later, I was heading back up to the head office, and by that time we had a new office manager who lived near the head office, so was based there most of the time. When I got there, I dropped my things off at the hotel and headed over to the office. I went to his desk and asked to have a quick chat. I explained to him what I had overheard Mark talking about on the phone and said that maybe the company might like to look at his visa status. So a week went by and nothing seemed to happen. Then he stopped showing up to the office. A few days later, I got told what had happened from one of the other SEO team members. Mark had been fired with immediate effect for no longer having the correct visa to work in the UK. The company did not want to get involved in sponsoring a new visa for him. I don't know why I started asking questions around the office, random chit-chat, and I found out that Mark is from Dubai, and he was here on his wife's student visa. I don't know how that works, but it was all above board. I also found out that his wife's course had finished, and that left them with a small window of time to get a new visa. That is when it all clicked. Now there are some doggy people in London and everywhere else, and they would set up these fake collages that would sign people up to get visas to live and work into UK at some point before or after this. Saw a program on this. And normally these were set up in tiny offices that you couldn't swing a cat in, let alone be a collage. They were used as postal address for the collage, and they would charge a course fee to be enrolled and thus be able to apply for a student visa. So, what Mark was trying to do is to get enrolled in one of these collages so that he could stay in the UK and carry on working. I found out a few weeks later that Mark and his wife did have to leave the UK and go back to Dubai because he didn't have any money coming in to pay for his new collage course by Mark. When I found out that Mark had been let go, I pulled Johnny aside and filled him in on everything. He could not believe it and was stunned that they would try and do that. I apologized to him as it was my fault that he had been targeted by them in a way to get at me. He would not accept it and said that I had gone above and beyond in defending him. Following on from this, I made it quite clear to Andy that I know what he and Mark had done, and I would not be forgetting it. And to watch his back, I made sure we were not in earshot of anyone else. About 2 months later, Andy handed in his notice and left the company, never to be seen or heard from again. I have told this story to some people over the years, and I have been asked so many times if I feel guilty for what I did. I always respond the same way. I feel guilty that Johnny was wrongfully accused and targeted. I don't feel guilty about what I did to mark you don't mess with my friends, family, or team.